Welcome to the darkest corners of your imagination, where fear knows no boundaries. This is Mr. Night Scares Story, the home of spine-chilling tales that will haunt your dreams. Here, the night comes alive with stories of unspeakable terror, from cursed forests to haunted houses, from lurking shadows to untold urban legends. We bring you nightmares you'll never wake up from. Are you brave enough to face what lies ahead? Once you enter, there's no turning back. Subscribe now, if you dare. And remember, every story you hear here might just be true. Mr. Night Scares Story, where fear becomes reality. Story number 1. The Widow's Veil. In the quiet hills of Vermont, shrouded in mist and shadow, stood Blackthorn Manor, a sprawling Gothic mansion with a history as twisted as its ivy-covered walls. For over a century, the manor had been the subject of whispered legends. Some said it was cursed, others that it was the gateway to hell. The locals called it the Widow's House, after its most infamous occupant, Eleanor Blackthorn, whose ghost was said to haunt its charred ruins. The house had been abandoned since 1912, after a fire consumed much of the interior. Yet, strange lights were often seen flickering in its shattered windows, and a ghostly figure in black was spotted roaming the grounds. Those brave enough to enter rarely stayed longer than a few hours, emerging pale and trembling, muttering about the veiled lady. Despite these stories, investigative journalist Claire Reynolds was determined to uncover the truth. A skeptic by nature, Claire had spent her career debunking supernatural claims. When her editor assigned her a piece on America's most haunted houses, Claire saw it as an opportunity to prove yet another ghost story false. "I'll spend the whole weekend there," she told her editor confidently. "I'll leave with nothing but creaky floorboards and drafty windows." On a chilly Friday evening, Claire pulled up to the overgrown gates of Blackthorn Manor. The house loomed in the fading light, its once grand facade now weathered and crumbling. The skeletal remains of a wrought iron fence surrounded the property, tangled with dead vines. A rusted sign hanging from the gate read, "Blackthorn Manor. Abandon hope all who enter." Claire rolled her eyes at the melodrama and pushed open the gate, which groaned like a dying animal. She parked her car and unloaded her equipment, cameras, audio recorders, and a flashlight. As she approached the front door, the air seemed to thicken. The temperature dropped noticeably, and a faint smell of smoke lingered, as though a fire had been extinguished moments ago. Claire hesitated but shook it off, chalking it up to her nerves. The door creaked open with an ominous groan, revealing a grand but decayed foyer. A massive chandelier hung precariously above, its crystals coated in soot. The walls were blackened from fire damage, and the air carried a faint scent of charred wood. "This place is perfect for a horror movie," Claire muttered, setting up her first camera. Claire spent the evening exploring the house, recording every creak, groan, and whisper. The first floor was mostly intact. A grand dining room with a long, dust-covered table, a library filled with scorched books, and a parlor where soot-streaked portraits of long-dead Blackthorns stared down at her. At midnight, she heard it, a faint, mournful sobbing echoing through the halls. Claire followed the sound to the grand staircase, her flashlight trembling in her hand. At the top of the stairs stood a shadowy figure, a woman in a flowing black gown, her face obscured by a tattered veil. "Hello!" Claire called out, her voice shaking. The figure didn't move. Then, slowly, it raised a hand, pointing toward the second floor. Claire froze, her instincts screaming at her to run, but her curiosity won. She climbed the stairs, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. When she reached the landing, the figure was gone, but a faint trail of wet, soot-stained footprints led down the hall. The footprints ended in front of a door. Claire hesitated before turning the knob, revealing a charred bedroom. In the center of the room stood a blackened rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth. She stepped closer, her flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. That's when she saw it. Carved into the wall above the bed, in jagged letters, "Save me." The next morning, Claire dug through the mansion's library, hoping to uncover the history of the house. Hidden behind a false panel in a desk, she found Eleanor Blackthorne's diary. The entries revealed a tale of abuse and betrayal. Eleanor had been married to Henry Blackthorne, a cruel and controlling man. When she discovered he was embezzling money and planning to abandon her, she threatened to expose him. In response, Henry locked her in the attic and set the house on fire, choosing to destroy everything rather than let her escape. Eleanor's charred body was never recovered. Claire felt a pang of sadness as she read Eleanor's final entry, written just days before the fire. If you find this, please know I never meant to anger him. I only wanted to be free. If there is justice in this world, let my story be known. That night, the house came alive. At midnight, Claire was awakened by the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through the halls. She grabbed her flashlight and recorder, following the noise to the attic stairs. The attic door creaked open on its own, revealing a space untouched by time. In the center of the room stood a massive mirror, its surface blackened and cracked. Claire's reflection appeared distorted, her face twisting and shifting. Suddenly, Eleanor appeared in the mirror. Her veil lifted to reveal a skeletal, burned face. She screamed, and the room erupted into flames. "Save me!" Eleanor's voice rang out, deafening and desperate. Claire, terrified but determined, grabbed the diary and held it up. "I'll tell your story. I'll make them remember you." The flames flickered and died, leaving Claire alone in the silent attic. The mirror shattered, and with it, the oppressive weight of the house seemed to lift. Claire left Blackthorne Manor the next morning, shaken but alive. Her article, detailing Eleanor's tragic story, went viral, sparking national outrage. The town erected a memorial for Eleanor, ensuring her story would never be forgotten. But Claire couldn't escape the house's grip. Weeks later, she began seeing Eleanor's reflection in mirrors, her burned face whispering, "Thank you, but it's not over." Story number 2. The Hallowed House. In the deep woods of North Carolina, where the trees grow so close together they blot out the sun, there is a house that no one dares to enter. Known as the Hallowed House, it sits at the heart of Hollow Creek Forest, a sprawling wilderness avoided even by hunters. The house is infamous for its cursed history, a place where people disappear, where time bends, and where an unspeakable darkness lurks. For decades, the house was left untouched, until a group of friends decided to prove the legends wrong. What they found inside would become one of the most horrifying stories ever told. Alex, a thrill-seeker and amateur filmmaker, was always looking for the next big story for his YouTube channel. When he stumbled across the legend of the Hallowed House, he knew it was perfect. He convinced 3 of his closest friends, Lisa, his level-headed girlfriend, Danny, his skeptical best friend, and Mia, a paranormal enthusiast, to join him on a weekend expedition to the house. "We'll document everything," Alex said confidently. "We'll prove it's just another urban legend." The others hesitated, but the promise of adventure, and Alex's stubborn persistence, eventually won them over. The group set out on a crisp October morning, hiking deep into Hollow Creek Forest. As they ventured further, the trees grew denser, their twisted branches clawing at the sky. The air grew colder, unnaturally so, and an oppressive silence blanketed the woods. After hours of walking, they finally saw it, the Hallowed House. It was a 2-story structure, its once white exterior now gray and rotting. The windows were broken, and the front door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the wind. The house seemed to breathe, its walls groaning as if alive. "This is it," Alex said, pulling out his camera. "Let's make history." Inside, the house was a maze of decay. The walls were covered in strange symbols carved into the wood, and the air smelled of mildew and something metallic, like blood. Lisa immediately felt uneasy. "I don't like this place," she whispered. "Relax," Alex said, filming everything. "It's just an old house." But then the anomalies began. The clocks on the walls were stuck at 3:33 a.m., their hands ticking but never moving forward. The floorboards whispered when stepped on, faint voices murmuring incoherently. Shadows moved independently of their owners, flitting across the walls like predators stalking prey. The group eventually discovered a locked door leading to the basement. It was reinforced with rusted chains and had an inscription burned into the wood. "Do not unseal what is buried." Mia, the paranormal enthusiast, felt a thrill of excitement. This could be it, a portal or some kind of ritual site. Danny, ever the skeptic, laughed. Or it's just some paranoid homeowner's idea of a warning. Ignoring Lisa's protests, Alex cut through the chains with bolt cutters he'd brought. As the door creaked open, a blast of icy air rushed out, carrying the scent of rotting meat. The basement was pitch black, but their flashlights revealed walls covered in more symbols, smeared in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room was a stone altar, and on it lay an ancient, leather-bound book. The book was inscribed with the words, "The Hallowed Grimoire." Its pages were filled with incomprehensible symbols and illustrations of grotesque, otherworldly creatures. Lisa begged Alex to leave it alone, but he was already flipping through its pages, fascinated. "This is incredible," Alex said. "This could be proof of something, some ancient cult or—" As he spoke, a low, guttural growl echoed through the basement. The group froze, their breath hitching. "What the hell was that?" Danny whispered. Before anyone could answer, the lights on their cameras flickered and died. The room plunged into darkness, and the growl grew louder, now joined by faint, disembodied laughter. The group scrambled to escape the basement, but the door slammed shut with a deafening bang. The laughter turned into screams. Agonized, overlapping cries that seemed to come from every direction. Lisa shone her flashlight toward the altar and screamed. Standing behind it was a tall, shadowy figure with glowing red eyes. Its form was inhuman, elongated limbs, a featureless face save for the eyes, and fingers that ended in jagged claws. It stepped forward, and the symbols on the walls began to glow, pulsating like a heartbeat. "Run!" Mia screamed. They bolted for the door, Alex clutching the book as if it were his lifeline. The figure gave chase, its guttural growls reverberating through the house. The group managed to break out of the house, sprinting into the forest. But the woods had changed. The trees seemed to shift and move, their branches reaching out like claws. The path they'd taken was gone, replaced by endless darkness. Behind them, the figure emerged from the house, moving unnaturally fast. Its red eyes pierced the shadows, locking onto them. One by one, the group began to vanish. Mia was the first to go, her screams cut short as the figure dragged her into the shadows. Danny was next, tripping over a root before being swallowed by the darkness. Lisa and Alex kept running, the book still clutched in Alex's hands. They eventually stumbled upon a clearing, where an ancient stone circle stood. In the center was a pedestal identical to the one in the basement. "We have to return the book," Lisa cried. "It's the only way to stop this." Alex hesitated but eventually placed the book on the pedestal. The forest went silent, and the figure appeared on the edge of the clearing, watching them. Lisa stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Take me instead," she whispered. Before Alex could stop her, the figure lunged, and everything went black. Alex woke up alone at the edge of the forest, the house and his friends gone. He tried to tell his story, but no one believed him. Months later, Alex started seeing shadows in his apartment, shadows with glowing red eyes. And late at night, he heard a voice whispering from the corners of his room. "You should have left it buried." Story number 3. Whispering Pines Asylum. In the remote outskirts of Oregon, surrounded by dense, suffocating forest, lay the ruins of Whispering Pines Asylum. Once a state-of-the-art psychiatric hospital in the 1930s, it was shuttered abruptly after a series of gruesome deaths among the patients and staff. Official records claimed the deaths were due to a viral outbreak, but locals knew better. For decades, the asylum sat abandoned, its windows shattered, and its halls silent except for the occasional thrill-seekers who ventured inside, only to emerge pale, terrified, and forever changed. Some never returned at all. When a small documentary crew decided to film a paranormal investigation at Whispering Pines, They expected the usual bumps in the night. What they encountered was something far darker. The team consisted of 5 members: Sam, the skeptical host and lead investigator; Maggie, the team's historian, who loved uncovering hidden truths; Eli, the tech expert with a knack for setting up cameras in the most haunted spots; Rachel, the empath, sensitive to paranormal energies; Tom, the cameraman and comic relief, who didn't believe in ghosts but loved the adrenaline. The crew's goal was simple: spend 48 hours inside Whispering Pines and document any signs of paranormal activity. The group arrived on a chilly afternoon, the sun barely piercing the thick canopy of trees. Whispering Pines loomed ahead, its brick facade crumbling and its once grand entrance overtaken by ivy. Inside, the asylum was a labyrinth of peeling paint, rusted gurneys, and graffiti from previous explorers. The air was heavy, carrying the scent of mildew and decay. As they set up their equipment, Rachel froze, her eyes wide. "Do you hear that?" she whispered. The others paused, listening. A faint sound echoed through the halls, a soft, childlike giggle. "It's probably an echo," Sam said, brushing it off. But Rachel couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. That night, the team began their investigation. Cameras were placed in key locations: the children's ward, notorious for the tragic deaths of young patients; the operating theater, where controversial lobotomies had been performed; the basement, which was rumored to house a hidden morgue. At first, the activity was subtle. Doors creaked, cold spots appeared, and faint whispers danced through the air. But as the night wore on, the asylum began to come alive. While reviewing footage from the children's ward, Eli noticed something chilling: a shadowy figure darting across the hallway. "Did anyone walk past this camera?" he asked, but everyone shook their heads. Moments later, a loud crash echoed from the operating theater. The team rushed there, finding a rusted surgical tray overturned and the words, "Get out," scrawled on the wall in fresh blood. Tom laughed nervously. "All right, which one of you is trying to scare me?" "No one's messing with you," Maggie snapped, her voice shaky. By morning, the team was on edge. Rachel had spent the night hearing whispers that no one else could. Maggie woke up with bruises on her arms in the shape of fingers. "Something's here," Rachel said. "It's angry." Sam insisted they continue, determined to finish the documentary. They decided to explore the basement, where rumors of a secret patient ward had persisted for decades. The basement was a maze of narrow corridors, the air thick with the stench of rot. At the far end of the hall, they found a locked door, its hinges rusted. Eli picked the lock, and the group stepped into what appeared to be an underground ward. The room was filled with rows of metal beds, each with restraints. The walls were covered in scratched messages: "Help me," "They're watching," and "No escape." As they filmed, the temperature plummeted, and the lights on their cameras flickered. A deafening scream erupted, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. Then they saw her. A figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in a tattered hospital gown, her head twitching unnaturally. Her eyes were hollow, her mouth stretched into a grotesque grin. "Who's there?" Sam called out, his voice shaking. The figure tilted her head, then vanished. Panic set in. The group decided to leave, but the asylum wouldn't let them. The front doors, which had been open hours earlier, were now locked. The windows were sealed, though they'd been shattered before. As they searched for another way out, the asylum seemed to shift. Hallways led to dead ends. Doors opened into empty voids. "Stop moving!" Rachel screamed. "It's playing with us." Trapped, the group regrouped in the operating theater, hoping to wait out the night. But the asylum had other plans. The lights died, plunging them into darkness. One by one, they heard their names whispered, soft at first, then louder and more distorted. Rachel began convulsing, her eyes rolling back. When she opened them, her voice was not her own. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, grinning. The team tried to help her, but Rachel lunged at Maggie, her strength unnatural. Sam pulled Rachel off, but as he did, the room filled with laughter. Dozens of voices overlapping, mocking them. Eli bolted for the basement, screaming, "There's got to be another way out." The others followed, but when they reached the basement, Eli was gone. In his place was a bloody handprint on the wall. By dawn, only Sam and Maggie remained. Exhausted and terrified, they stumbled back to the main hall. As the first rays of sunlight pierced through the cracks, the front doors creaked open. They ran, never looking back. Sam uploaded the footage to his channel, but it was removed within hours. Maggie refused to speak about what happened. Rachel and Eli were never found. Sam moved to a new city hoping to start fresh, but the asylum followed him. Every night, he woke to the sound of laughter and whispers. One morning, he found the words, "Come back," carved into his bedroom wall. Whispering Pines had claimed him, and it wouldn't stop until he returned.